Right, we're going to do some shooting now. I've got this, this is the alley bow, Tartar bow. This is 30 pounds at 28 inches. And in order to keep everything sort of on a level platform with all the bows that I'm going to look at, we're going to shoot the same weights of arrows. We're going to shoot a 400 grain, a 500 grain and the 650s that I've got, just so that we've got some consistency with the results. And I'm kind of shooting over like about a 10-meter range. I'm not really worried about shooting long distance with this. When you're learning right at the beginning, don't try and shoot long distance. 10 meters is enough. 10 meters is enough for you to work on your shooting technique. And whilst we're talking about shooting technique, let's kind of go over what you're doing with thumb draw. Now I'm the kind of guy that I don't like this sort of thing where people say, oh, you start off shooting like this, and then when you know how to do that, then we'll show you how to shoot like this. It's like, no. Why bother? I much prefer just give me the whole technique in one go. I'll get it, I'll understand. Don't treat me like an idiot, okay? I really, it annoys me. Anyway, you don't annoy me. People that do that to me annoy me. Now, so what we'll do is I'm going to show you the thumb draw, and I think I'm going to put my hand up close. So what you do is when I teach people, I say, look, with the thumb draw, what you're going to do is you're going to use this part of your thumb in here, right where that piece of tape is that I put on, I showed you earlier. So what you do is you create like an L shape like this. I call this like the anvil. So you curl your fingers around like that, point this finger out, your pointing finger, and then your thumb is going to come in and press on the knuckle there. And that's going to be where you grip the string. So if I put this up here, I'll turn it around this way so you can see. When I put my hand on here, you start off putting your hand like that, but you put your hand on here like this, and what you do is you curl that around till it, see, now I've got the string. This finger, this doesn't grip the string, and make sure it doesn't cross over this way. All right, it's going to be in line here. So when you've got an arrow knocked, okay, what happens, so we'll just knock an arrow there. What happens is, when you grip it, the arrow sort of goes in that web of your hand, and you grip underneath like that. And this finger is really good because it holds the arrow in place. So it means that, particularly imagine this is a horse bow, right? So when you're on a horse bow, you don't want the arrow, as you're riding along, you don't want the arrow to fall off. Well, look, because I've got that finger on there, look, I can be completely upside down. It doesn't fall off because this finger here, this one, the one I'm waggling up and down, that holds the arrow against the arrow pass on the left hand side. It doesn't work, of course, in the Mediterranean style because the finger's pressing it the wrong way. But that's why I think that these kind of techniques go together. So that holds it in there quite nicely. It's quite easy. Now when you draw, what you're going to do is actually, before we get to the draw, let's look at what we're doing with the arrow. See, traditionally they say, oh, stick the arrow 90 degrees to the string. That's kind of where you want to start, right? So this is the bottom of the arrow pass here. I've got the arrow at 90 degrees, but what you want it is, you want it up about a centimeter like that. That means that when it pushes forwards, it lifts over your hand as opposed to running directly over the top, and you shouldn't get so much flex burn, and it should fly more freely. You're not getting any drag. Okay, so when you first start, line it up at 90 degrees, push it up about a centimeter, then grip hold of it. Okay, now with your grip, what you're going to do is, with your grip, with a bow like this, your thumb, if you like, is the arrow shelf on this side. Okay, so when you grip with your hand, you want to press in with the top part of your hand, right? But you're only gripping with the bottom three fingers, the little finger, that one and that one, okay? So, and you point forwards like this with your thumb and your finger. And what that means is now you're not when you loose the arrow, if you grip a bow really, really tightly and shoot it, you will get a most massive shock coming up through your arm, and your teeth will be rattling in your face. Okay, so you don't want to do that. You just grip with these bottom three fingers, and you can see what happens is the bow starts to go forwards. Now that is the start of katra. Okay, because what happens is as you release the arrow and the string, your hand is already pushing forward in that web, right? So you can feel the tension when you're holding the arrow. Let me show you. So we put an arrow in here. So as I'm doing this, I'm actually pushing forwards with my left hand at the top, but not a vast amount, but just enough that you can feel a tension there. Yeah, and then what happens is, as you release, the bow will do this. Well, that's katra, and what that means is you're kind of flicking the arrow forwards, but it's also you're flicking the arrow in a way over the top of your hand. Okay, now the second component to katra, because there are multiple forms of katra, but with this particular bow, it's nice and light. We can use a katra where you push forwards, but you also go down to the side, right, to your left. Okay, so it's, as you're shooting, it's going to be going, this top limb is going to be going down to the right, and the bottom one's coming up to the left. So as you do that, and it's not a huge movement like this with your arm, it's literally just that pressure in your wrist there, like that. What happens is that now lifts, pushes it clear. See, it's right next to the bow, it pushes it clear of the bow, and it goes on the right hand side. Okay, so you flick like this. Don't worry about it too much. First off, start doing that and then gradually evolve into this downwards technique, but only with a bow like this, a lightweight bow. For other types of bow, you need to use a different form of katra. Right, so that's what's happening with the bow, and what's happening with your hand, and what's happening with your grip. Let's look at the draw. I'm just going to keep my fingers on here like this, just to draw it, to save my thumb from taking the weight all the time. You put your arms up in the air, not above your head, just like this. And what you're doing is, at this stage of shooting, you're looking at the target. You're not looking at the bow, you're not looking at what's happening here, right? Ignore all of this, what's going on here. You concentrate on looking deeply into the target. And then you pull it back. And what you do is, see, I'm not like this, I'm not across my body, I'm sort of out at an angle, I don't know what it is, 60 degrees, something like that. Right, what you do is, as you pull your arms down, you pull back and you push out, and you rotate your shoulder blade and the top half of your body round like that. And so effectively you start using your arm and your shoulder to pull the bow, but at the end of the pull, you're using your back muscles, and a slight rotation in the hip through here, from your left leg up across here is expanding. So watch what happens as you draw. You see? You're pulling it round like that. And what happens is, you get to about there and your arm's like, I've had enough. And then your back pulls in, and just by pulling those back muscles and rotating out of your hip, you can get like quite a few more inches of movement on the bowstring, pulling it back. And don't forget, so it's like you're pulling and pushing at the same time. You don't hold your arm out straight and just try and pull with one arm. You push and pull at the same time. And remember, this is a horse bow, so you're going to use it on a horse. You've got to be able to shoot in all different directions, like this, all the way round. So stance and how you stand, it's almost like personal, because let's face it, if you're sitting on a horse, right, and you're traveling this way, but I want to shoot someone over there, I can't change my stance on the horse. I'm only rotating the top part of my body. Yeah, so I'm going to shoot over to the left. So I'm going to have to adapt how I shoot, and you need to practice that. That is a really important thing if you ever start to ride on a horse. You've got to be able to shoot different directions. To begin with, the typical stance that you stand is your feet about 45 degrees. So my target's over there. If I draw a line from there to me, I'm not standing so that my shoulders are in line like this with the target. My shoulders are at about a 45-degree angle. So my left foot's further forward than my right foot, and my right foot's back. Yeah, so my feet are like this, but the target's directly that way. That allows you to have this hip expansion. If you're standing like this, it's not going to work if you can't do straight. Okay, you've got to have your feet at about shoulder width apart, right? And so when you draw from there, you're looking at the target, you're not doing anything else. And then we've got this thing called an anchor point, where you draw to. You do your draw. See, I always draw to here. If you look at me, sometimes I feel where my cheekbone is, and I rest a finger on there, so I'm consistently drawing. Because if you change how far you draw the bow backs and forwards, it's going to affect the elevation of the arrow like where it's going to land. It's going to be going up and down. If you find that your arrows are in a line up and down, what it is you're not pulling back to the same anchor point. You're pulling back here, backwards and forwards. Try and find a bone on your body that you can rest it on, that's at approximately the right draw, and then you get used to like drawing back kind of to your ear. You get this sensation where you're here, and it's, on my case, the arrows on my beard, I know that. And then there's draws where you can draw it further back or even further back. So let's have a look. Let's have a look what we're doing. Now I'm going to shoot with the 400 grain arrow first. This is the wooden ones with a wooden nock and just a standard field point. And we're going to see what the sensation of shooting is like. All right, so here we go. So I'm looking at the target. Bit of Cutra. That's good. Now, that was a bit vibration in there, bit of vibration, it was a twang rather than a kind of thunk, but it was still a bit vibration coming up through my left hand. So I'm going to shoot one more just to make sure. I've got to be careful with these arrows because they're a bit short. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of vibration. It's not bad, but it's not comfortable either. Right, so let's try these. These are, that was the previously was the 400s. These are the 500 grain, and these are carbon arrows, plastic nock, and they've got a field point. Here we go. Let's have a look. Oh, that's better. I can draw this. That was good. That felt solid. That felt solid. That was actually quite pleasant. There wasn't much hand shock. Coming through here, coming from the limb, wasn't much hand shock coming through, and the vibration calmed down quite quickly. Here we go, one more. Yeah, that's quite nice. Actually, that's probably, I feel that could be the weight that you'd probably shoot this bow. The weight arrow, it's like 500 grain. But what we'll do is we've got. This is a 650 grain arrow, so this is way heavy. It's wood, it's got a metal point on the front, plastic nock on the back. I think they're goose feathers. No, I don't know what they are. They're feathers. Let's see what this one feels like. Ah, no, straight in the middle. Wish you could see, that's a really good shot. Okay, that's entirely comfortable. There's practically no hand shock at all. But the arrow does slow down a bit, you can see that. Yeah, they're not bad actually. The 650s are pretty good. There's not much hand shock at all, none practically, just vibration. But when you're looking at the arrow, you can really see. I can see on the target now that they've dropped, probably about. Let me see. Yeah, they're about 2 or 3 inches lower than the other, and that's only over 10 meters. So that gives you an idea of how rapidly they drop over a longer distance. So that's the penalty you're going to pay for shooting heavier arrows. You're going to end up with, you might end up with less hand shot, but you probably end up with less range, and they're going to drop. If you're consistently always shooting just with say 600 or 650 grain arrows, then you'll get used to it, and you can aim off, as it were, sort of aim up a bit higher. But I think that in terms of the sensation that I felt with how the arrows went, I'm going to get the 500s again and shoot them. Right, so something else you can also learn as well when you're shooting is there are ways of holding arrows on here, which means you can have like about 3 arrows in your left hand, and then you can just pull them out and put them on the string, so they're ready to hand. You don't have to pull them out of a quiver. So we'll cover that in a later video. It's fun, it's all fun. Right, so let's have a look. I think these are the 500 grains, and they seem to be quite fast. I quite like it. Let's have a look. Oh yes, wow, that's so quick. I got 30 pounds. It feels like a heavier pulled bow with the speed that these are going. Wow, awesome. This is a little pocket rocket, this thing. quite impressive actually. 2 center shots I did nicely, and you can really hear it's got this velocity, kind of a whipping sound that it makes through the air when you get the weight right for the bow, and this kind of as it shoots down the range. It's a bit pathetic, but it does have this kind of sound that you get used to. And in fact, that's an important thing when you're starting with right at the beginning of shooting. Use your ears. Listen for what's happening with the bow. Listen for what's happening with the arrow. If you can hear a clacking sound when you shoot, then it means that the arrow's hitting the arrow pass. You know, if you can hear a scraping noise as the arrow goes over your hand, you know, and you look at the leather and there's a lot of marks there, then you haven't quite got the cut right, and you're not like getting the pressure, not putting enough pressure up here. You need to push it out so that it flicks over and doesn't actually hit your hand. But these are things that you're not really looking at, because obviously you're looking at the target, but your ears still work. So listen for that, and listen to the sound of the bow. If the bow sounds loud, you know, then probably the arrow weight's too low. It should have a more of a twang sound to the bow than a thunk. If you've got a bow that's making a thunking noise, then I would not shoot those arrows anymore. Get something that's a bit heavier. Yeah, so it's kind of a sensory thing. You need to look at everything. And of course, your eyes, sometimes you can catch what's happening with the arrows, how they fly, and they should be shooting straight into the target. You don't want them shooting like going to the left or to the right, and this is all a product of your technique, basically. If the arrows are going too far to the left or to the right, that's probably also a factor of the fact that the arrows are too light, and the spine, when we talk about the spine of an arrow, which is something you don't really have to worry about too much with traditional shooting, where you're like using a thumb draw. But if the arrow flexes too much, you know, if it's just way too thin, then even using a thumb draw, the arrow's going to be potentially kicking around, and it won't be going into the target straight. So if you can't get your arrows to go in straight, just have a look at them. And if, like, this is stiff, you know, this one is stiff. This is quite stiff spine. This one, quite flexible. I can see when I'm shooting these that I'm pushing it a bit, you know, I can see them moving in the air, and I can see them flexing a little bit too much. The carbon's good, because carbon arrows, the reason I like shooting them is because they're fairly stiff, but they're lightweight. In order to get the same kind of stiffness in wood, you have to have much thicker wood, and of course the weight comes up, so that's something to think about. It's worth actually investing in a set of carbon arrows. I've got these from off eBay. I'll put a link in my description where I got them from. They're fairly cheap, and they're easy to replace. You can just get another set, but they're very durable, you know, and they're not affected by the humidity in the same way that wood is. And if you live in a very humid country, I mean, in Australia, I live in Australia, and sometimes the humidity here is incredibly intense, and you know, I don't think that a biocomposite bow would survive very easily over here. So, you know, fiberglass is practically the only option for me, really, which is one of the reasons I'm into fiberglass bows, and that and the cost of a hybrid bow. But anyway, back to this one. Yeah, I'm really impressed. It shoots so fast for a 30 pound at 28 inches, and it's really, you can really hear it. It's really twangy bow, and that doesn't, you don't get much hand shock through there at all. Even with the 400 grain arrow, it's like, yeah, okay, I could shoot that. It was okay. But 500, that's just, for me, that was just where it sort of started to kick in, and it had the nice amount of weight and punch. And I think shooting 500s, you're going to probably get a good range out of them as well. And I mean, they're practically touching each other, those two. I just shot then at 10 meters. So yeah, overall I'm very impressed with this style of bow. And of course, like I said, for Viking reenactors, if you're a Viking reenactor and you're doing Eastern Viking, the shape of the seers on here, the shape of the seer, the bash and the kazan, and the length, it's practically identical to the bow finds, the Rus bow finds that I've alluded to, that the Russian archaeologists have been posting information up on them recently, and they're pretty much the same size. And I mean, this is a Crimean Tartar bow, and you have to wonder, yeah, maybe there's a continued tradition, you know, with this style from all that time ago. So I mean, that's, you know, good 1200 years, 1200 years. Of course, it's not a biocomposite bow. It is fiberglass, but you know, with the leather on here covering up the limbs, you know, if you were to use this at sort of Viking reenactments or something like that, yeah, no one's going to be any the wiser, really, and it's going to look the part. It's pretty much, you know, it's there for as good as analog as you can get in a fiberglass bow. So yeah, pretty cool. I love it. Anyway, with that, I will catch you next time.